10-year-old Caleb Schwab was at Schlitterbahn Water Park in Kansas City with his family. His father was a state lawmaker, and the family had come out for a special Elected Officials Day at the park. Caleb was excited because he was finally tall enough to ride Verrückt, which at the time was the tallest water slide in the world. The slide stood nearly 168 feet high, almost as tall as Niagara Falls, and riders went down it on a 3-person raft at speeds of around 70 miles per hour. The drop was so steep, it briefly lifted riders out of their seats before the raft hit a second hump and shot them down the rest of the way. Caleb climbed into the raft with 2 women he didn't know, which was standard practice since the ride needed a specific weight range to operate properly. Caleb was placed in the front seat because he was the lightest, and the 2 women sat behind him. The raft was dispatched. Witnesses said it picked up speed normally at first, but as it hit the second hump, something went wrong. The raft went airborne. Caleb's body was thrown upward into the metal hoops and netting designed to keep riders inside the slide. He was decapitated almost instantly. The 2 women survived with serious facial injuries. The investigation that followed was devastating. Engineers found that the slide had been designed by people with no formal engineering background. Some of the early calculations behind the ride had reportedly been worked out on napkins and rough sketches. Test runs before opening had shown rafts going airborne multiple times, and rafts had even flown off the slide during testing, but the park opened it anyway. The designers were later charged with multiple crimes, though the charges were eventually dismissed. The slide was torn down in 2018, and the company filed for bankruptcy soon after. Rosie Esparza. On June 14, 2013, 52-year-old Rosie Esparza was visiting Six Flags Over Texas with her family. She was excited to ride the Texas Giant, a hybrid wooden and steel roller coaster that was one of the most famous rides in the park. The Texas Giant was known for its steep drops, sharp turns, and a first hill that plunged riders down at a 79-degree angle. Rosie was a heavier woman, and when she sat down in her seat, she reportedly told a ride attendant that the lap bar didn't feel like it was locked properly. According to multiple witnesses, she even asked the attendant to check, but she was told it was fine, and the train was dispatched. As the coaster climbed the first hill and began its massive drop, Rosie was launched out of her seat. She went over the side of the train during one of the steep turns and fell dozens of feet below. Her body struck the metal roof of a tunnel beneath the track before landing below the ride structure. Witnesses, including her own son-in-law who was riding behind her, watched the entire thing happen. The ride was stopped immediately, but Rosie was already dead. The investigation found that the lap bar on her seat had not fully engaged because of her body size, and that the ride's restraint system did not include a secondary backup like a seatbelt. Six Flags later settled with the family privately and added seatbelts to every seat on the ride. The Texas Giant reopened a few months later, but the death changed how much of the amusement park industry thought about restraints for larger riders. George Larson Jr. George Larson Jr. was just 19 years old when he went to Action Park in New Jersey in 1980. Action Park was already gaining a reputation as the most dangerous amusement park in America. Locals called it Traction Park and Class Action Park because of how many people got injured there. The rides had minimal safety standards, the staff were mostly teenagers, and many attractions were experimental designs that hadn't been properly tested. That day, George was riding the Alpine Slide, a long concrete and fiberglass track that snaked down a mountainside. Riders sat on small carts with a simple lever that could be pulled back to brake or pushed forward to go faster. There were no seatbelts and no helmets. George was going down the slide when his cart hit a section of the track where the brakes reportedly failed to respond properly. The cart left the track. George was thrown off and struck his head on a rock beside the slide. He died from the injury before he could reach the hospital. He was the first recorded death at Action Park, but he wasn't the last. Over the years, several more people would die there in different ways, including drownings, electrocutions, falls, and collisions. The park finally closed in 1996 after years of lawsuits, but it became a kind of legend in American culture, the perfect example of what can happen when an amusement park operates without serious safety oversight. The Big Dipper Riders. On May 30th, 1972, at Battersea Park in London, what should have been a normal afternoon at the fair turned into one of the worst amusement park disasters in British history. The Big Dipper was a wooden roller coaster that had been operating in the park since 1951, and it was hugely popular, especially with children and families. That day, the ride was packed. Children were waiting in long lines, some of them on the school trips, and the train was full as it started its slow climb up the first hill. The train reached the top and began its descent, but as it picked up speed going down, something snapped. The rope used to pull the train up the hill broke loose and got caught in the mechanism, causing the anti-rollback device, the safety system meant to stop the train from sliding backward, to fail. The train began rolling backward down the hill, picking up speed. It crashed into the loading station at full force. The wooden structure broke apart on impact. 5 children, all between the ages of 9 and 13, were killed instantly. Another 13 children were seriously injured, some with broken bones and head injuries that would affect them for the rest of their lives. The disaster shocked the entire country. The investigation found that the ride had not been properly maintained for years, and that the safety mechanism had been failing repeatedly without anyone fixing it. The Big Dipper was torn down soon after, and the entire Battersea Park Fun Fair eventually closed permanently. The incident led to massive changes in how amusement park safety was regulated in the UK, with strict new inspection laws being introduced just a few years later. Kathy Diekman. It was June 9, 1991, when 32-year-old Kathy Diekman visited Kings Island with her children. The park's suspended roller coaster, the Bat, was one of the most popular rides there. Riders sat in hanging cars that swung beneath the track as the coaster raced through tight turns and drops at high speed. During the ride, Kathy reportedly lost her hat. After the coaster returned to the station, she climbed over 2 protective fences and entered a restricted area beneath the track to retrieve it. Ride operators apparently did not realize she had entered the area before dispatching another train. As the coaster sped through a low section of track,